Okay. Shalom, everybody. We are on Pasuk Chaf and Chaf Aleph in Bereshit. We are on the 5th day, right after the Ma'orot. Okay, so it says like this. Vayomer Elohim, Yishritzu Hamayim Sheretz Nefesh Chaya. And Elohim said, let the waters teem. Yishritzu means that they should teem with teeming living creatures. Ve'of ye'ofef al ha'aretz, and the fowl that fly about above the earth. Al pnei rakia hashamayim, right, on the across the expanse of the heavens. So one more time, Elohim says that the water should teem to produce sheretz nefesh chaya, living creatures that swarm or teem. Ve'of ye'ofef al ha'aretz, and a fowl will fowl-size, ye'ofef, it'll fly, al ha'aretz, on the earth. And then the verse continues after it says, and a fowl will fly over the earth, and will fly seems to be extra. It could have just said, and a fowl on the earth. It's not really on the earth because it's al pnei rakia hashamayim, on the face of the firmament of the heaven. What is it talking about, right? It's upon the earth because birds also live on land. They don't live on water, but they also fly. Let's see. Okay. Oh, and then the next verse, Vayivra Elohim et hataninim hagdolim. So for the last verse says that Elohim said, and then it follows up before the water responds or not. It says that Vayivra Elohim, that Elohim created et hataninim hagdolim, the great taninim, the great sea giants. Ve'es kol nefesh achaya haromeses, and all the and every living being that creeps. Asher shartzu hamayim leminehem, that the waters teemed after their kind. Ve'ez kol of knaf lemineo, and all fowl, a winged creature, right, according to its kind. Vayar Elohim kitov, and Elohim saw that it was good. So what's interesting here is that the first pasuk says, God says that the water should teem, as if he's commanding to the water, like we had before, where he commands to the earth that it should produce vegetation. And yet, it doesn't say that the water carried it out. It says that God, the next pasuk is, Vayivra Elohim, that God creates then the Taninim Hagdolim, and all the things that he mentioned in the previous pasuk that came out of the water. So what's the relationship with the teeming of the water, and why does God have to create it? What's going on here? Alrighty. Okay, so the Alshech HaKadosh says like this. Hine Amro. The verse says, Ye'ofef. When the verse says that that a fowl should fly, a flying fowl on the face of the earth. So, Ye'ofef, that it flies, seems to be superfluous here in the verse. Why does it say Ye'ofef? Ve'od. And further, Ech ha'of. How does a bird or a fowl, she'ikro miyesod haruach, that here, if we're going to have one of these discussions again about the primal elements, the 4 elements, earth, fire, right, wind, and water, and we're going to talk about those according to molecular biology, the spiritual molecular biology. Okay, so the Alshech understands that birds, if they have an essential primal spiritual element, it's got to be air because they fly. So he questions. He says, how is the bird, which its main essence of one of these primal elements is wind or spirit, how can she'ikro miyesod haruach, that its ikar, its essence, comes from the element of air or wind, ki al kein poreach, and that's what allows him to fly, nivra mehamayim, how could it be that he was fashioned or created out of the water? Meaning God says that the water should produce flying things. The ability for a creature to transcend, to defy gravity doesn't seem to be something part of the nature of water. Ve'od. And another question. Amro achakach, the verse says afterwards, Vayivra Elohim, that God created, that Elohim created. So why then, right? Meaning, if the verse says, Vayivra Elohim, ve'et kol nefesh hachaya, and all the living creatures, haromeset, that creep or swarm, asher shartzu amayim, that the water teemed, leminehem, according to their varieties and species, ve'es kol of knaf, and all winged bird, limineo, according to their species, vihine, and behold, achar shegam ha'of haya min hamayim, not only did the bird ascend from the water, hayalo lomar Afterwards, if that was the case, the verse should have said, Asher shartzu hamayim, that the water teemed to produce. Achrei ha'of, after it mentions the bird. V'yichlal hakol, and it will include everything. Meaning, it seems to be in the second verse, it mentions, after it enumerates all the creatures that swarmed out of the water, then it places the winged creatures. So in the first verse where God says that the water should swarm, he includes the birds within the swarming of the waters. But then when it describes that God created them, it says that he made all the great sea creatures and all those living creatures that swarm out of the water, and the winged birds. So the question is, why is the winged bird singled out and excluded from the creatures that swarmed from the water? Okay, so those are his questions. V'hine, achar shegam ha'of haya min hamayim, haya lo lomar asher shartzu hamayim achrei ha'of v'yichlal hakol. Right? Why does the second verse not end with the statement that swarmed out of the waters? Why does it seemingly exclude the winged creatures? Amnam, however, lakoshi hasheni, to the second difficulty we had, Rabbeinu Zal, our sages in the Gemara in Chulin, Heitivu asher diberu, they spoke very well when they said, Ki min harakak nivruhu aufot. Okay, so the Alshech HaKadosh is mentioning a Gemara here that says that the birds were made out of something called rikak. Rikak is like mud. It's a very thin, runny, cloudy water dirt solution. It's a combination of water and a little bit of dirt, enough dirt to make it give it some viscosity. Okay? So this is a statement by our sages in the Gemara in Chulin, and the Alshech HaKadosh asks, Umi hechricham lezeh? How did they arrive at this conclusion? How are they so sure? Amnam, however, heimarau asher hikshenu. They saw that which was difficult to us. Meaning, this is addressing our specific question. Ve'od, she'ech nivru ke'echad shnei hafachim b'davar echad. And it's also their statement that the birds were made out of the mud is also to address the question of how could two species, two creatures that have opposite natures come from the same source. Ki halo dage hayam v'chol romeis bam, for the fishes of the sea and all the other creatures that are within the oceans, b'tseisam min hamayim yamutu, when they leave their domain of the water, they die. V'ha'of, and when it comes to birds, shegam hu min hamayim, even though the pasuk here describes that they too came from the water, hu afal ha'aretz, it flies above the earth, al pnei rakia shamayim, right, on the face of the firmament of the heavens. So how can it be? What's going on here? How is it that birds come from the water, but the second verse excluded them from things that swarm from water? And how could it be that birds and fish both came from water if fish cannot leave and birds cannot be in the water? Amnam, who? Well, it seems to be as follows. Ki hataninim, when we mention the sea serpents, shebayam, these sea creatures, these sea monsters, udgasam, and the fish of the ocean, nivru min hamayim, those were created indeed from the water. She'ikaran yesod hamayim, because their main primal ingredient, so to speak, is the primal element of water. Alkein chiyusan b'mayim, therefore their life, their vitality stems from the water. However, ha'of, the bird, nivra min harakak, is made from the mud, or we'll call it rakak mud. Shehu ketit rach, it is like a very, very soft plaster. Alkein yiche ala aretz, and therefore it has in it the ability to live on the earth. Ve'adayin, however, we still need sarich tam, we need a reason, ki achar hayot hayisod hagover bohu yisod haruach, if we know that the main element in winged creatures in the fowl is spirit and wind, air, she'al ken yofef, which allows them to fly, ma yachas hayalo libare berakak mayim, then what is the relationship then? Why was it necessary for them to be created specifically out of the runny mud of the waters? Right? It should be that they were kind of fashioned out of spirit or wind or air. Amnamhu kihine ein bria she'ein ba arba yesodot. So here's the rule. This is really all creatures, all living things incorporate all four elements. And really the question is proportions. Ki im shehamamashim heim afer v'mayim, the the tangible of the elements, those that can be grasped, that have stable form on some level, some sort of mass, density, are the earth and the water. V'chalkeim nirgash yoser, and their aspects, their parts, in a combination will be felt more, babriot habasar v'alachut, with creatures that have flesh and lachut means wetness. Ach meruach va'esh ein roshem nikar, from the elements that are incorporated in a being, which are spirit and fire, their impression is not so much felt in this part of the creation. Rak mitziut chom uneshama. It merely manifests as heat and breath. Al kein yesh isato naaseh me'afar, and therefore there are those that isato, their dough, their combination of material which makes them who they are, is made from the earthiest of the elements, which happens to be earth. Vashlosha acherim, and the three remaining elements, heim kishutafin bilvad, they are merely as partners that are incorporated within this basically earth mixture. Heim remes ubehema v'chayato eretz. So those creepy, crawly creatures and the larger animals, land animals that live on the earth, so they're essentially made out of earth, afar. Al kain, therefore, hagover bam hu afar, that which overpowers, the overpowering element in their mixture is the earth element. V'yeshi karisato me'amayim, and then you have those whose main mixture is made of the element of water, ushar yisodot, and the three remaining elements, tfeilim alehem, are just secondary to the water. Aken yisod hamayim, therefore the element of water, gover, it overcomes or overpowers bibriut hayam, in the creatures that are from the sea. Ad shebitzetam min hamayim, to the point where when they leave the domain of the waters, yamuta, they will die. It is so necessary for them because they are made of the nature of water. Ach be'adam, however, with a human being, for example, leval yeh chamro achur kivhema v'chaya. On the one hand, we don't want that his materiality, the material that he's made of, should be as coarse like that of an animal, right? Like a behema, whether it's a domestic animal or a chaya or one of the wild creatures. Shitef bi'isato mayim. So God incorporated, partnered in his mixture the element of water to the degree that would not allow him to be as coarse as an animal. Remember, it's not a metaphor exactly, but it's like thinking of spiritual concepts as physical building blocks, but they're really spiritual concepts. They're elements that determine the spiritual nature of the physicality, the ultimate physicality of the materiality of the creature. Okay, so milvad masha asa'u biyadav. Aside, okay, the other way that God, so to speak, gave humans an elevated nature in their creation was that Adam is called Yitzir Kapav, the fashioning of God's hands. His right, meaning that God, we conjure up the imagery that God personally, his hands were involved. That like a on a sculpture, the sculptor's fingerprints are always there. Okay, so aside from that, so God also put the water into his essentially earthy mixture to mitigate the earthiness. And aside from that, he also, HaKadosh Baruch Hu personally made him with his hands, la'achino, to prepare him, el nishmat chelek Eloha mimal, to be able to receive his soul, which is a godly portion from above. Kasher nevar b'siyata dishmaya, as we will explain with help from heaven, meaning God willing, further on, be'amro, on the verse, vayitza Hashem Elokim, that Hashem Elokim fashioned man. So later on, he's going to address this in greater detail. But the point is that in God's fashioning of man himself, he took into account there are certain factors to allow for him to be the proper proportions between having an earthly nature and being able to receive a godly nature. And this was not just the fact that God fashioned him personally, but also that how he incorporated the elements, the primal elements, and the proper proportions. Okay, so lama nishtana mishar briot la'asoito b'kapav. Why was Adam singled out to be fashioned with God's hands? Halohu al yedei kach. Is it not through that specifically through this? Vayipach ba'apav nishmat chayim, that God can breathe into Adam's nostrils a living soul. Shehu mima shebetocho, which is what is from what is within Hashem. Meaning, when you breathe into something, you're breathing out, you're exhaling that which is inside of you. So part of the symbolism of God breathing in a soul into Adam is that he's apportioning him something that was essentially, its domain is within God, so to speak. Uvechein, and therefore, or through this, birtzot Hashem levro b'riyah, in God's desire to create a creature, sheyiyah tagboret yisoda ha'avir la'uf, that it should have the dominant element of air or spirit or wind in order to fly. Shehine lo yibare meruach. God did not simply just fashion it primarily out of the spirit. Ki ein bo mamash, because spirit does not have really corporeality. Rak b'mayim o afar, only the elements of water or earth that eventually manifest as tangible elements in the physical world. V'yashlit hu yitbarach koch avir odef al hashar, and then God will just allow for the air to rule just a drop more than normal on the rest of the elements. Al kain me'asahu yitbarach. What did Hashem, blessed be He, do? Amar, He said, Im evra'oto min hamayim, if I create the winged creatures that are meant to fly out of the element of water, yiheh kadagim, they will be like fish, sheyigvu'u, that will die, that will expire, ba'afafam alamayim, when they fly above the water. The immeha afar, and if I fashion them out of earth, ki yeter ba'alei chayim, like all the other earthly creatures, lo yofafu, they won't be able to fly. Alkei, and therefore, lo bara'o me'afar av, God did not simply create the birds out of a thick earth, rak min harakak, but rather from a runny mixture of water and earth, that neither one of them overpower each other. She'afar shebokal, that the earth within that mixture is light. V'yikanes berifyon ha'afar ha'mu'urav b'mayim, and it will enter into this this mixture of, it'll melt in to this mixture which is made up also of water. Be'etzem koach yisod haruach la'ofef, with the extra, the added essential power of the element of spirit or wind in order that it should fly. So you see, it's all about the molecular biology, or the chemical biology, the mixtures of the elements and how they're proportioned to get the desired effect, so to speak. And now we can arrive at this seemingly superfluous statement in the verse when it says, on the earth. Remember, the verse says, Ve'of ye'ofef al ha'aretz, and the bird will fly above the earth, al penei rakia hashamayim, on the face of the firmament of heaven. Okay. However, hine zema amar hakatuv, this is what the verse says, yishvetzu hamayim, let the waters teem, sheretz nefesh chaya, right? Teeming living creatures. Heim haromsim toch hamayim tamid. That is a description of the creatures that teem in the water always. V'gam of, and also birds, shelo yeh kedag, that should not be like the fish, habilti mitkayem al arts, that are not able to survive on the earth. V'gam shiyeh ikaro yisod haruach, and also so that its main element should be spirit or air, ki ye'ofef. That's what the extra word, ye'ofef, that should fly, is coming to say. Al penei rakia hashamayim, on the face of the firmament of the heavens. Ve'ein zarak be'afar shebamayim. This is not just with the earth, or the dirt in the water, shelo yamut ala arts kedagim, right? The added earth to the water element by the fowl was not just so that they shouldn't die when they leave the earth like fish, v'gam shelo yichbad ba'afafo, but rather also there shouldn't be too much. They should not become heavy when they fly. Okay. On the other hand, that there shouldn't be too much earth that should hold them down from being able to fly. Ala echad amar, on the first, regarding the first issue, the verse says al haaretz, that they should have enough earth inside their mixture that they should survive on the earth. Kilomar im hamayim, together with the water. Tzarech, there is a need, hitztaref, in order to incorporate mashiyeche al aretz, in order to allow for it to survive on land. V'lo yamut kedagim, and it shouldn't die like the fish. Shehu afar, that's the element of dirt here. V'gam lo sheyeh afar av, but on the other hand, that the earth should not be too thick. Ki lo yigbar b'yesod haruach, that it shouldn't overcome the element of spirit, so that it wouldn't be able to fly. V'tzarech yid'eh, because there is a need for it to glide al pnei rakia shamayim, on the face of the firmament of the heavens. Shehu lahashlipo yisod haruach lid'os, in order that the element of air or spirit should be the dominant one to allow the creature to glide. Al kain, therefore, tzarich yiyeh ha'afar ma'at, the element of earth has to be very little. V'hainu rekak, and therefore we've arrived at the recipe for the runny mud. V'alkein, and therefore, achakach, afterwards, hu omer, the verse states, asher shartzu hamayim, that the water teemed, kodem hiskira of, before, the verse seems to conclude in the middle, before it mentions the actual creation of the birds, the appearance of the birds, it says of that which teemed in the water. Because the birds were not meant to be in the same share in that category, just to incorporate with them, to share the element of water. Alki ha'of lo shartzu oto hamay be'etzem, and that is because the birds, the fowl of the air, do not teem essentially in the water. That's not where they live out their life cycle or where they reproduce. Okay, rak harakak, rather this mud, this thin mud, shehu afar ha'ma'urav bahem, which is the element of dirt which is incorporated or mixed within them. Okay. So I don't remember if this is the second or third piece that talks about this esoteric idea, this way of thinking about the four elements.